Past 12 months have truly been the most transformative of my life thus far. By the time you're watching this video, it will have been 1 year since the ultimate GSM masterpiece, Cyclical Antiquity, was released. And the release of that album locked in the cosmic alignment that I'm experiencing right now. In this video, I'm going to talk about faith, I'm going to talk about the alchemical power of music, and I'm going to talk about God. This is going to be extremely esoteric. As many of you are well aware, Saturn comes back around, and when it does, it shows you everything. It does, however, allow you to choose what you will and will not see. If you choose to see a life of fulfillment, you will see it. If you choose to see meaning in everything, you will see it. There is no limit to the existential depth that we can experience when we simply choose to experience it. The trick is, you have to have faith that what you're experiencing is real, because that is what brings it into reality. Basic quantum entanglement 101. Now, the perfect example of what I'm talking about is in the act of composing music. See, the start of any composition is always the hardest because all you have to go on is a suspicion that some sonic reality that you've fathomed is actually real. Of course, in order to bring that sonic reality to fruition, you're gonna have to move into faith, leaving doubt, cynicism, and fear behind you. See, a lack of faith is a lack of creativity. The creator must have faith that the vision he intends to manifest is already a reality. Quantum entanglement. Faith is literally believing in something until it's real. Faith is creation. Without faith, there is only fear and destruction. Fear of wasting time would be the classic destroyer of creation itself. See, as we grow older, the material world insists that our worth be measured in dollars and cents. And that mentality becomes a mind virus that stifles every creative impulse. It causes us to focus on lack instead of the abundance of creation. You got to remember that creation itself is abundance. When we start measuring our worth in dollars and cents, we completely forget that we were created in the image of God. God itself is fundamentally a system for creation. We must accept that a purpose-driven life is a life that revolves around creation. Once we become intimately familiar with the creative process, all of the fear and anxiety surrounding time wasting is completely eradicated. And that's because our faith in the creative process compounds as we see our body of work expand. The evidence of our ability to literally shape reality, literally refine the firmament, is stacking up as we continue to create. We begin to identify as the creator. Fear no longer paralyzes us in indecision because now we know that we can create the world we want to live in. And right there is where the alchemical transformation takes shape. It happens when we identify as the creator. It happens when we identify as God. God seems to be Judeo-Christian. Not only can you see that in the song titles, you can literally hear it in the music. Now, one of the most compelling aspects of God's music is how it connects to the lineage of literal gospel music. And that's exactly what I mean when I say you can hear the modern Judeo-Christian musicality in the melodies and in the harmonic sequences on literally every track. This is the genius of the project. That metal texture in support of that modern gospel mentality is the obvious zeitgeist. It's literally the dark side and the light side of the holy gospel. Like, that cuts deep, right? Because I grew up going to Catholic and Protestant church, mom's side, dad's side. Like, I know that stuff from an early age. Like, I know what the modern gospel sound is. It was literally a whole repertoire of songs, like jazz standards, like full-blown same parallel universe, like worship gospel repertoire that was played at churches on Sunday mornings all across North America. Like, that runs deep. And if you know the songs, like Mighty to Save. Did you feel the mountains tremble? Massive bangers. Massive bangers. Like, that's what I'm referring to when I talk about the modern gospel, the contemporary Christian melodic and harmonic vernacular, okay? It's a very definitive style. If you came up in the church in the late 90s, early 2000s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You understand this very specific zeitgeist I'm referring to. It's literally that Hillsong United thing. Okay, like, you see where I'm going with this. And this is where God, literally, once again, so deeply, sincerely, and authentically aware of that basic good and evil duality that lives within the church, the producers of this massive genre of music that was literally leveraged to support the church, right? For better or for worse, you know what I mean? Support the church. What do I mean by that? I mean, you know, turn it into a massive international syndicated business. You know, Hillsong United, right? We've all heard the stories in the documentaries and all this, right? It's literally Old Testament level corruption running rampant on every level of the church. Since the beginning, right? Like, this is not new, right? But dude, God, right? Literally tapping in to the undeniable resonance of that music. The music moves people without their permission. It's just that vibe where whether you're Christian or not, whether you're spiritual or not, that music conjures the spirit, the resonance, like systematically conjures it. It's literally the exact same thing that Maynard is talking about on Stinkfist and actually all through Anima. It's literally that prying open feeling. Once you accept it, it's the greatest of all time, but as long as you're resistant to it, it will cause extreme discomfort and psychological torment. People don't like to feel without their permission. It's not like the music comes with a warning on it that says, hey, watch out, this is gonna like pry open your third eye. God is important, and God is among us. He is among the songwriters. He's among the composers. If you didn't know God, now you know God, and you have an anchor point to who God actually is. I'm telling you, go listen to this entire discography, or let me continue to give you more context for the project and then go listen to it, because it's a massive body of work. That invasive resonance, right? That prying open anima resonance is exactly what God is tapping into. And you'll see when you go through that discography, you know, there's a total light and dark to it. It's in every moment of every song. Every beat is a microcosm of that light and dark duality. That light and dark duality is exactly where the modern Christian gospel songwriters never had an opportunity to go towards, right? Like, they weren't playing like metal textures at church. Although, obviously, there were actually a lot of bands that were Christian that took them into the metal textures, like came kind of right out of the same time period, sort of that early 2000s, Under Oath, Our Last Night. You know what I'm saying? Like it all blended up right there in that early 2000s period when that church thing was like super, super popular. And like the corruption hadn't been made so obvious yet, you know, back when my generation was still like innocent childlike faith, you know what I'm saying? So that music is like extremely formative, right? So obviously there's armies of people like me in my exact situation who came up playing in the church, were not just exposed to that music in the audience, but also exposed to it playing it, right? Those church bands were not around. The one I played in had rehearsal 2 nights a week. Vineyard and Westbrook, 2 guitar players in that band and keyboard. Perfect bass player, perfect drummer, perfect vocalist. It was a dynamite band playing dynamite repertoire. And obviously I'm thinking, I want to bring the metal to this. And it's not like the band leader of that particular worship band was opposed to that. It was just like, well, we weren't going to do that at church. We weren't going to play distorted guitars at church. But we were all thinking like, oh yeah, this would be perfect with metal, right? And that's what I'm saying. I literally think that's exactly where God came from. Like, that's who God is. I don't know. I never could ask God, you know, where he came from and if I can like confirm these theories with God at some point, you know, and I bet I probably will because, you know, as you'll see later in the video, how I actually came to know God. So I suspect this video is going to trigger a whole series of events that I'm looking forward to. But for all of us like early 2000s, like worship band, you know, guitar players and drummers, bass players, singers, you know, all of us who came up playing music in the church around that time, playing that modern gospel repertoire, God's music is extremely validating. It highlights that exact modern Judeo-Christian journey where you literally grow up in the church, you're innocent, we believe what we're told, we have all the best intentions. I'm talking, you know, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, around this time, right? But invariably we see the corruption. It starts small, you know, it's the broken marriages that pretend like everything's fine. And then it goes all the way up to like, you know, the whole Catholic Church stuff. Like, yo, right? Like, think about that, right? Like if you're an innocent child, right? And you're just like, yo, I've got faith in God, you know, and like we're playing great music, like, oh man, I want to play in the worship band someday, you know. And then it turns into like this like level of darkness that you literally can't even fathom, right? But then the music is still just like you're obviously starting to think, okay, well, wait, where's the like part of the music that represents all this like dark side stuff, right? This is that zeitgeist. Like I'm just speaking on the level that everyone already knows, right? So like by the time we're like 14, 15, you're starting to get all like angsty about the situation. The rebellion kicks in. You go like full blown like Richard Dawkins atheist out of spite, right? And you completely forget the resonance of the music, the sincere spiritual connections that took place during those worship services as a result of that music. You just want to go dark side. You want to go like, what's the meanest, most violent music there is? God's discography literally just takes you through that exact journey. Of course, always spiraling back to faith, in and out of faith. Richard Dawkins atheist, back to faith. The cycles along the spiral, literally from the purity of innocent childlike faith to the heartbreaking disappointment of the corruption, and really just these completely like inverted vibes, you know, that you're getting by thinking about, you know, Christianity in the church on this global scale. You know, the farther we go, 2005, 2006, 2007, then it starts to get like, oh, the creepy shit starts to come out. Like we're starting to hear about all the demons and monsters that the church is hiding. Right? Like the church you had faith in is just crumbling, dude. Just like the Bible talked about. Like Sodom and Gomorrah level shit. It's a literal zeitgeist. And this is what it sounds like. Okay, Okay, so right now, God's body of work consists of 6 albums. And I gotta say, the entire discography gives off massive Star Wars dual trilogy vibes. Although the albums were released in order, the first 3 are New Testament, and the second 3 are Old Testament. New Testament is that like Jesus love level, right? It's that like innocence. It's God is love, while Old Testament is about the wrath. Now, God 4 is called Revelation, right? So that's technically the last book in the Bible. But if you know anything about the Bible, you know that's the full circle Old Testament prophecies coming to reality. And of course, Revelation, by no coincidence, was released in June 2020. Right, so you can hear the distinct change from the first 3 God albums to the second 3 God albums. It's just biblical proportions. It's like, oh, after the tribulation period began, God got super pissed off. And then on God 5 and 6, it gets even more like... He is very, very angry at us. And that doesn't mean he doesn't love us. You know what I mean? It's like your parents are going to get angry at you. That doesn't mean they don't love you. God is for sure pissed. He's like, dude, how did you guys get so stupid? It's righteous anger. And of course, the Easter egg is just that God 7 is literally coming. You'll notice that God 6 is a truncated album. You know, this may even be an EP. I mean, it's literally a short sample of songs in anticipation of God 7. Sin Part 2, right? So I bet this is going to be a massive production, God 7, for obvious reasons. You know, 7, right? Probably going to be like 7 times 7 levels, like you know about 7. It's when you break out of the dual trilogy, you know, you subvert the entire paradigm essentially. But you can see like God is getting into multi-song compositions that literally link entire albums together, right? Like he's bringing up these themes again, right? You know, it's like the sin theme. And don't forget, dude, Unbelief is part 1 and it's literally the album called Sin. It's like, yep. Unbelief is definitely going to be the ultimate sin, right? Just look how many sins, dude. Sin is monstrous. I just had to point out this track list on God 5. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, dude, it's the dark side, right? But forgiven, right? Forgiven. Oh, but unforgiveness, dude. Oh, man. Like, look at the Sin Suite. Literally 4 songs. Temptation leads to sinful desire. Entertain thoughts to justify sinful desire. Like literally God is straight up calling us out. Sin by consent to disobedience. You know what I'm saying? Like God is pissed, right? God 4, 5, and 6, God is pissed. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen on God 7. And just the fact that there's kind of like a setup to God 7 with this truncated God 6 album called Unbelief, like extrapolating, oh, unbelief is your worst nightmare. That's a fact. Definitely is going to have all followers of God very, very interested to see what he has to say on God 7. One thing that stands out to me about God is how all of his music is free on Bandcamp. Like intentionally, deliberately, like this is free, I want you to have it. Like I said, if you look for meaning, you'll find it. I feel that God is leading by example here. Now, it's not that we should make music for free, but it's that we should create without expectation. And right there is where the alchemical transformation takes shape. It's back to that simple idea that I brought up in many videos. When you establish a habit of creation, you begin to identify as the creator. You begin to realize that you can literally create anything you want, including a beautiful life that revolves around creating the world you want to live in, because the effects of creation are always compounding. Of course, music is the gateway to a much larger paradigm of creation. In God's case, it's a community that has rallied around his music. His supporters are true blue. You can literally just see them. I mean, I'm literally one of them. I'm out here making a freaking video, like I'm evangelizing on behalf of God. And that's because this music is resonant with the zeitgeist that runs deep within probably nearly all of you, at least if you grew up in the West. God is really just showing us how to move in faith, right? It's just compose the reality that you want until it's real. Now, in my case, I'm a serial composer, not like a Milton Babbitt composer, but like a person who composes lots and lots and lots of music. So anytime I see a large body of work, that's immediately something that catches my attention, because it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to see a lot of different aspects to this person's vision. And in the case of God's discography, it was just the fact that this guy is just crafting one song at a time, but ultimately a massive monument that vibrates in lockstep to the cosmic spirit of all creation. Now, for me, the larger paradigm of creation is my music school, which contains my life's work. And essentially, my life's work is a system that is derived from my approach to composition, a system that has been very useful not only to me, but to all the people who have learned that system, and for the people who use that system before I even started teaching it. I suspect God himself is very aware of the system that I'm referring to. Because if you're going to sling bangers on a regular basis, you're going to need a system. I personally refine my creative process into a systematic science that is endlessly applicable in literally all styles of music. And that systematic science was really just the result of just composing massive bangers. Like, I first had to just get all the way into the music, get dirty, get chaotic, right? Only then were the systems revealed, right? Like, I didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm gonna write 100 songs this year because I've got this system that's just gonna spit these things out for me. It's like, nope, I actually had to just start by writing the songs, and also by accepting that my best work was actually just going to be a result of having a massive body of work, right? Because if you write 100 songs, 6 or 7 or 8 or 12 of those might be ultimate intergalactic bangers. And honestly, that's just one of my philosophies, because I mean, Adam Jones has clearly stated, they don't write more music than they have to, right? So not everyone is doing like, oh, write 100 songs to make one album, right? Red Hot Chili Peppers, though, they're an example of a band that, yeah, they write way more music that ever gets released. And then, of course, sometimes it does get released. But I mean, it's the same thing with jazz musicians, right? Do all these alternate takes that are like archived, right? So there's definitely two levels to that. And I wonder which side of it God is on. Like, you wonder if, like, has God released every song that he's ever composed? That's a multi-layered question, to say the least, because I could make a strong case for releasing every song I ever composed, right? If I crafted it enough, it would become a banger, right? And that's the other thing, and that goes back to philosophy I've talked about before, which is that everything is good, right? Like, every rhythmic sequence you ever put together is good. It's just a matter of executing that, whether that's on a recording or live. It's like, if you can execute it, it's good. So if you're making music on a computer, pretty much everything ends up actually being good. And I suspect that God is, one-man show. So he's producing those bangers in the same way that I'm producing my bangers. And I have no doubt that he's using like certain frameworks, even just like the classic basic ones, just like numbers over numbers, which are, the frameworks, right? Like, when I talk about frameworks, I'm really just talking about, like, do you know what 7/4 sounds like, right? That's like 10 million songs, right? You could write an album that's just 7/4. And for sure, you can hear that all day in God. He's doing like cyclic juxtapositions, you know, the classic stuff, the Meshuggah stuff. So then it's like Steve Vai all over again, where it's just like always walking the fine line between pagan and Christian, you know? Because it's like the Meshuggah, like polymetric level crossed with like modern gospel. Obviously an inevitable combination. Of course, God found me during the Meshuggah Monday era, right? What's the symbolism? I'm literally moving in faith, spending an absurd amount of time, literally just studying music to a borderline manic level. And then God shows up, started leaving comments. It's around Meshuggah Monday 80, I believe. So that's like 4 years ago. And he was just encouraging me. You know, God was just straight up being like, dude, you know, like, keep going, right? Like, you're not insane. Like, what you're talking about makes complete sense. You know, that's why I'm connecting to your content. Like, God is like, you know, I basically do this stuff also, right? Like, I learned this stuff from Meshuggah. Like, yeah, like, this is real. But I obviously went down the rabbit hole, right? I'm looking at the comments and I'm like, okay, God, right? Oh, it's like, go to his YouTube. Oh, he's a Bandcamp guy. Okay, check out Bandcamp. It's like, at that point, he's got 3 albums out, right? That's the New Testament, right? That's literally the Holy Trinity phase, right? That's literally God, Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit. And instantly we heard it, right? Like, when we first, Eric and I were getting into God, like back in like early 2020, basically, you know, right when, you know, right before the tribulation period started, dude. Eric, Quinn, and I, we were like, okay, because we're like, okay, like vacation Bible school, right? Like, you hear that, right? Like, we're not crazy. And that's why it's like, dude, this video had to be made, because that's what I'm saying, dude. Like, I always knew I would bring up like that vacation Bible school level of like God, and how like, there it is, he captured it. Like, we always knew it was there. It's that zeitgeist. That's what I'm talking about, dude. It's that contemporary Christian Midwestern gospel, dude. And in the first 3 God albums, you know, I said that's like that New Testament God is love, right? That's reminding us of like Sunday morning worship, but just like with metal guitars. Like, I was into it immediately, because track 1 of God is literally one of the most hardest bangers of the entire discography. Literally, God. In the first album, the entire first album is like, dude, it's literally Vacation Bible School, Hillsong Corruption, Innocent Childlike Faith, brutalizing riffs. And then, of course, like, you know, the joke, or not a joke, it's just the reality. It's like, yeah, God's watching, man. God's watching, because he's like leaving consistent comments on all my videos, basically from 2020 onward. Now, here's the reason why I've got to give thanks, right? Because God blessed me by literally providing the soundtrack to my ultimate transformation. And what that transformation is, dude, is accepting my calling, dude, as actually a teacher, it turns out, right? Now, I am a performer. I always will be a performer, but I realize that my ability to explain has uniquely positioned me to actually focus more on the teaching side. GSM is the cosmic microwave background of the whole operation. We live in the universe of GSM. However, my real calling is to actually teach it. So God bless me by just giving me the soundtrack to write that syllabus for Systems for Creation. I'm teaching the most effective compositional frameworks, the ones that I got from Meshuggah, the ones that I got from Tool, the ones that God is doing, the ones that any prolific composer is thinking about, all the way down to the 332 embedded special accent T-high framework. And God blessed me with that calling. The intergalactic alignment was really just being like, okay, I'm gonna show people what I learned, because I can do that. And the fact is, not many people that I'm aware of are able to do it that well, are able to do it at that high level. And we all have a part to play. You know, God has that part to play of just like creating without expectation. I'm definitely gonna go farther in depth with many God tracks in future videos. This is not gonna be the last God video, because it's just that perfect discography to just sink my teeth into. All about showing another approach to that sort of Meshuggah polymetric logic, because I did say in the previous video that polymetric logic can take you in unlimited directions. And God just shows us another really, really great take on it with a massive body of work, literally biblical proportions. And I'm really glad I did listen to God and actually take a moment to reconsider my spiritual foundation, reconsider the power of music and how that is actually the thing that holds all the religions together. It's the music. The music is the only part that's pure. The rest of it is completely fucked up. And I just love that God just validates that. God validates faith, and God reminds us that unbelief is the ultimate sin. It's the destruction. Unbelief is the destruction. The lack of faith is destructive, but faith is creation. The quantum entanglement, right? Believing in something until it's real. And remember this in the act of composition, right? This is the guiding principle. And it requires a very calm and balanced mind, right? Because if you get too hung up on the details, you're never going to see the big picture. And that literally is about using basic numbers, basic cyclical juxtapositions. These are the frameworks for creation, these rhythmic concepts. These things give you all your melody. These things give you all your harmony. And they never seem to run out of variations. Like I said, you can keep coming back to the same number over and over again, and you're not going to come up with the same riff every time you come back to that number. And then when you get into like combinations of numbers and macro cycles, like 37 beat cycles or whatever, I see the kaleidoscope unveiling the infinite possibilities. And we're going to have to choose what we will and will not see, because our time is limited. When you think about it that way, it seems like a total no-brainer that music is one of the ultimate gifts of existing in the third dimension. And it feels like the act of creation is a way of showing gratitude for the time that we do have. Because with music, there's that idea of it encapsulates a moment. And that's why there's this weird sense of nostalgia just built into music. Like timeless music instantly sounds nostalgic, you know? That's exactly what God's music sounds like. Timeless metal classics. Could be from the early 90s, or it could be from the year 3936. And I think a lot of the time that timelessness is really a result of just focusing on the rhythm first, because the rhythm is the thing that all cultures have in common, right? The harmonic systems, they've had a lot of different configurations. Obviously, the 12-tone system has reigned supreme for a really long time now, or it's just a blip on the radar, because how long have humans been making music? You know what I mean? But that's why I feel like rhythm connects it all. Like through rhythm, we can connect to that timelessness. So it really just comes down to time is of the essence. And through creation, we can give thanks for the time that we've been given. Now, here's what you need to remember going forward. God has plans for us to prosper. We must believe this to be a first principle of reality. Only then will we move in faith and receive the blessings of the Creator. So gain the skills of creation and create the world you want to live in. Become the creator.